Thanks, everyone. And as we go through, please feel free to interject any questions that you might have. I'm more than happy to go ahead and talk about those along the way. First thing is my background. I've been computers 40 years, going back to Atari 400. You can look at all of that. I am an OWASP individual lifetime member, so I put my money where my mouth is, and I joined OWASP at the beginning of 2016. All these photos are mine. Everything that's expressed here is my own. They don't represent any former, current, future, or any other organization. And to conform with the LEGO Group's fair play notices, LEGO is a trademark of the LEGO Group of companies, which does not sponsor, authorize, or endorse this presentation. For me, I've found that using Lego sets makes it a lot easier to have a conversation and create memories. So instead of just the generic memes that people might just see and go past, I like to have things that are customized. I've been doing presentations with my Lego sets going back to the beginning of 2016. So I've found that it's a lot easier to make the stories your own rather than just relying upon someone else's narrative. But it's always good to add in some more cultural references and bring up things. So with Jack Skellington and Sally, with A Nightmare Before Christmas, I see Jack as a consummate developer, someone who has a great skills and is able to bring his team together. He knows how to paint that picture. But when he sees Christmas Town, he goes to the, what is this? What is this? And so he gets enamored of something new. And I take this as a developer wanting to get into a new language, which is always a good thing to have that different perspective, expand your skills. But it's also important to understand your target audience and which applications you're trying to develop. So this is where having Sally come in as a voice of reason always helps. A good team worker there. The other part of this photo, the Mandalorian, this is the way with Grogu, aka Baby Yoda. And one thing I do want to point out, each one of the Lego Advent calendars, whether it is Lego Star Wars that are always coming out, or Guardians of the Galaxy or Marvel, they've been out a couple of years, Lego City or Lego Friends, they're all going to have scarves on here. So you could see the holiday sweater and the scarves. I've used this in a different presentation where I've talked about API security. You could see that on my LinkedIn if you wanted to. Having a story to tell is always easier if you have something to work with. This one, we've got a couple of different photos. Shakespeare from the Lego movie. So his to build or not to build, that's not really a question for us because we live in the security space. We live in the application development space. And really, there's not a dividing line anymore between security and development because we need to make sure that we're all singing the same songs. So that's where the party is here. And then OWASP top 10, but it's more than just the basic top 10. You'll have APIs, and OWASP just changed from web, open web application security project. Now it's open worldwide. So it's more than just applications. And most things, if you're new to security, if you're a student or just transitioning careers, a lot of the time you will see OWASP top 10 knowledge in any of the job requisitions or job postings. So from the OWASP perspective, they break it down into builder, breaker, defender personas. So in this case, I've got Emmett from the Lego movie, Mr. T, A Team, and then over here I've got Harry Potter. I also try to represent things with the backgrounds as much as possible because telling a story, you want to not only have your plot and your characters, but you want to have a meaningful background. One other thing you're going to notice in this presentation, I use a lot of minifigures and builds from Lego Dimensions, which has some unique minifigures, otherwise known as minifigs, as well as some different combinations. It is a video game. Unfortunately, it's been discontinued, but I do have all the sets. So if you ever wanted to see some of those in action, just ping me afterwards. And I liked Mr. T here because you don't always see someone as powerful, and it does bring it back to a different generation. Telling stories is also important that you have a shared experience. So going back to the foundations of not only our own modern time, but going back to the very beginning, stories are designed to teach lessons and bring them forward. And then, this is one of two slides that I have that are using not Lego minifigures. This was this was Mega Bloks Minions before the Lego group got the license for Minions. Minions is now part of Lego sets. In this day and age, there's always security vendors that are out there trying to sell you their own unique tool set. And there's a lot of tools that are out there, very meaningful, very purposeful, that can satisfy that requirement. But a lot of times there may not be fit to your exact purpose. There could be ones that are immature. So that's why I have Batmite over here. You've got Kiss Kiss Batman. Here's an Easter one. Almost all of these minifigures here can be found in the Lego Batman movie. And I was just rewatching that last night. If you're ever stumped about security ideas, honestly, looking at Lego movies, looking at Star Wars, other ones that are out there, Harry Potter, there's a lot of very good authors that are talking about security, not just in a cyber context. So being able to have expertise in one area really makes it easier to come up to speed. So for students, if you're learning something, you really want to be able to tell your own story as well to get out there. I'm on the advisory board for a local community college. And so I know firsthand how hard it is for students to get those internships or get their name out there. So publishing to GitHub, having your own portfolio, contributing to various open source projects, that's all part of creating your own utility tool belt. The next portion I want to talk about is creating a story for your friends and family. And oftentimes in industry, we have the same old phishing and training about business email compromise and this and that, but it's really just boring materials. There are some that are out there that are meaningful and powerful, but I've found that it's easier to start off with family connections. So we don't want our children, our parents, or our grandparents to be taken advantage of, regardless of whether they're doing online learning or if they're on a social media site. In this case, my narrative is Facebook. So a community of people in the spacing industry, but here we have a family with a child. We've got a disgruntled dad We've got some other impersonators. So here we have some villains who are trying to change the narrative, whether they're a nation state, and then someone who's malicious actor, really close in disguise. For these, there are some that are brand new that just came out with the collectible series. So this space evil guy here, and then the mom and baby space alien, space people in their moon suits getting ready to go. Then this is Emmett from the Lego Movie 2. So he is Apocalypse Emmett over there. The one in orange is from a Lego minifigure collectible encyclopedia. There's a lot that come out that'll have specific minifigs on the front. So if you ever go to a big box store or go to the Lego store, if you go to the Lego store, make sure you have your list ahead of time. And I've got so many sets these days. I've been taking my laptop to keep track of which sets I've already bought so that I don't have duplicates unless I want them. In some of the minifigure sets, you'll also see some unique things to tell the story in a different perspective. These pink icons right here, these pink pieces, are actually roller skates. So Lego can change things up, just like you can change things up in your security lessons or in any kind of talk that you have. Another thing here with Emmett that you could point out later on, you have a broken helmet and his space logo is all faded. So, this is a well-worn, used type of representative, but the broken helmet here is a known vulnerability that happened all the time. So they corrected it later on. But this represents an application or your tool or your product that you haven't patched and you haven't kept up to date. And so the next one here is another warning about social media, and especially some of the things that have happened recently in the banking world. In this case, we've got Batman and Alfred. Again, Lego Batman movie minifigs on here. But Batman and Alfred are publishing all of their vacation plans in real time to social media. So what does that do? Well, it makes them and their company vulnerable to various different types of attacks. And over here, you've got Robin. He does have a shark repellent, but he hasn't been given all of the controls necessary to make sure that he validates controls. So in this case, the Joker is pretending to be another vendor. I need you to change your routing numbers because your bank, Gotham City Bank, is not really as reputable as it used to be. And Robin says, oh, yeah, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. And then he passes all the bat bucks over. Instead, what there should have been is a process in place. So if Batman and Alfred were not in the picture, who should junior executives go to make sure that there are checks and balances? Extremely important, not just with suppliers and with your own personal banking, but across the board. Also with grandparents, it comes into play a lot, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Social engineering. This case, I wanted to play up a couple of different things. And a lot of it, I'm using Lego specific, their own brand of minifigures and sets, but the Lego collectible sets have come up with various different ones. There's Looney Tunes, there's the Muppet Show. But this one, Emmett, in the Lego Movie 2, they're closing up the walls to their fortress, making sure everything's secure. But then the star comes in and gives a sob story. Says, oh, please, I'm hurt. And so Emmett does what he's not supposed to do. As a junior admin, he allows the gates to be opened. And then General Mayhem comes over, takes over their entire fortress, their castle, kidnaps key players. So I see this as an example of ransomware. So you could start off the conversation there, and then you're tailgating over here and piggybacking Petunia Pig, not just inside your company where you might have a badge, but it could be reminding your college students not to let anybody behind them come into the college dorm, or your parents or grandparents not to allow someone to come into their apartment building. So security is not just about things out there in the corporate world, but all of these steps, if we start off with our friends and family, then it makes it easier for our colleagues at work, especially around Christmas time. Our parents, grandparents are going to be extremely vulnerable to attack. So whether they're saying that they're from system support or they're calling from their bank, doing the SMS phishing, smishing, or if they're even, you know, having it on a malicious website. So maybe they've got some advertising on there. Your grandparents, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and give my money that way. But you, as a security professional, or even just a family member, need to say, hey, you know what? I think I saw a scammer. I did. And make sure that the scammers' operations are knocked out. In here, telling the different stories, there's a number of different ways you could create ATMs or just kind of a computer console. Also, a lot of laptops you could find in the different Lego sets. If you are going after the collectibles, it's best to purchase those right when they come out, but be careful about just buying a ton. Some of them, they're in hidden poly bags and you can't really tell for certain. So a lot of the employees at the Lego stores will help you with some of those. But recently I purchased a lot at a local store and only got one or two of them. This one is my take on romance scams. You have Mademoiselle from a recent set, and she's in her environment. She thinks that she's talking online to King Tut, but really, behind the scenes, there's some zombie mummies that are here. Same way, a very accomplished potter is giving her heart to who she thinks is a farmer's market. But nope, she's actually giving it to those swamp things and banshees in the bog. Lastly, on the family side of things, it isn't as much in the news, but there's still bots that are out there to take over and spy on your family and kind of come back and take things over. So I've tried to combine some Star Wars minifigs in here, and then here's from The Simpsons. That's a minifigure set. Babies are not quite as frequent, but you can start seeing those in sets. And there's always a ton of different torsos or the bodies here with different dogs, cats, a lot of space ones as well. Other thing with, there's been a ton of medical entities out in the news, and sometimes even our elected officials get targeted and don't really realize what all is out there. So instead of where are my pants, where's my data? I thought it was safe in the cloud. And then you have to go through and start yelling at those clouds and making sure your doctors and medical professionals are aware. For all of these, you as a security professional, you need to be aware that end users are eventually going to have their accounts taken over. Sometimes it's expected. Sometimes it's because multi-factor authentication isn't being adopted, or multi-factor authentication starts getting charged. This one I used sets from the hidden side. You know, there are a couple of different, very neat different heads as part of that. So you typically would only see like minifigure heads the old style way. There's just a single head, but this one has an intermediate piece that you can then put together. Also, if you are looking for a specific expression or looking for something that's a Lego owned property, so Lego City, anything Ninjago, Lego Friends, those you're going to be able to go to a Lego store or online at lego.com or whatever your country is. Go to Pick a Brick, and then there are a lot of different facial expressions, facial hair, eyes. There's a lot of opportunities there. If it is a Lego licensed theme, such as Harry Potter, Batman, Marvel, Looney Tunes, and Muppets, you're not going to be able to find those there. But if it's something like Lego Movie, you will be able to. In the old days, you always heard talk about perimeters and firewalls and what's outside, what's inside. There are no more perimeters. You always have to assume that malicious actors are already there. And so they could be there for days, weeks, or even years. There's been a lot of account compromises and data exfiltration where they're just sucking the data out of your environment. And you aren't aware of it unless you're properly monitoring and logging it. Another thing, especially as there are more layoffs and changes in jobs, mergers, acquisitions, your disgruntled current and former employees, if you're not carefully monitoring the access and putting in those controls. So here, Radical Image Extreme, so Rex, he was disgruntled because he was neglected. So that's an example of corporate culture. Two-Face and Red Hood, they used to be on the side of good, but trauma impacted them, and so they turned to the villainous side. And then over here, we have an example of a Green Lantern going over to the evil side. There's various different yellow, red. There's even some zombie ones. This is another example of the attackers already being inside your environment. So on this one, I have the malicious actors being pirates. So various different scenes there and different maps in here. But unfortunately, all of our systems administrators, the sysadmins, they don't have a complete picture. They know they've got some things out there, but they've got here and there, but they don't really have a full understanding. Whereas the attackers have spent their time mapping out what you have and what you don't have on here. So this is why I'm telling a story here. Your automation process, you need to be aware of package poisoning, taking over of Git repositories, NPM, PyPy. You can't just trust any of your package installers. Most of these actually came from Ninjago movie, the Lego Ninjago movie with Garmadon's Lair. So this is what actually got me thinking. So Git up here, authorized access, danger, and then the volcano blowing up. So you just have to keep an eye out for the different sets that you might want to have and might want to come into play. Earlier this year, there have been a lot of emphasis and things in the news about file transfers and attackers taking that information out and making it do whatever they want to. So in this case, I've got owl post and some regular letters in here. But typically, those jobs are going to have the keys to your kingdom: extraction, transformation, and loading, or ETL. Typically, these types of batch jobs could also be called workload automation, have access to key databases. So let's talk about banking. Banking could have a mainframe on the back end, and the mainframe is still very much out there. So if you're a college student or retraining, and the local community college or even four-year college or university is offering some mainframe classes, I definitely recommend looking into that if you have the time and capability. So with your mainframe, you could be pulling back some of those batch processes, getting that data and then manipulating it some, so transforming it, maybe putting it into your AI machine learning for fraud detection, and then loading it up into another database. My perspective, I try to change things up to make it, oh, here's Professor McGonagall with transfiguration class. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense for ETL. We all have the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability from the security side. On the performance management side, I've been in that space a long time. There's overlap. You have your availability, capacity, and performance in there. So just like the availability on the security side, is it up or down? But then your capacity. So are you aware of how much you're actually spending? So it could be not just a denial of service, a DDoS, but it could be somebody going into your cloud environment and spinning up a ton of Docker images, Kubernetes. They could be doing a lot of Lambda calls. If you're not carefully tracking that and doing consistent across the board auditing, this can really kill you as well. So that's why I have Business Kitty and then some other sets from the Lego movie. Life cycle management. So in this case, I combined a number of different dinosaurs to talk about, it's not just writing your code and putting it into production, but how are you managing it when it's first an idea? So the eggs, and then the raptors are coming out. Then it grows a little bit. And then finally, you're monitoring those, getting to a mature stage. And then how are you going to take care of it when it becomes fossilized and put into a museum? Life cycle management is one of those things that you don't always think about at first. I mentioned Lego Dimensions again, and here's Gizmo and Spike. So don't feed them after midnight. Don't get them wet. So this is one of my examples of known exploited vulnerabilities. Depending on your age and how old you are, which movies you're used to seeing, this could be something that's pretty familiar to you, or maybe not. But with Gizmo, once he got wet and they fed him after fed, then the other gremlins after midnight, they went evil. This is my only other non-Lego set. Here's Grogu with a nice little pad, and then we have Groot as a youngster. Again, this is coming from an advent calendar, hence the Christmas tree on his back. Run books, technical work instructions. You'll see those on a lot of compliance checklists, but they're not just for a line item, but you actually need to make sure that they're readable and that they won't attack or make it too hard to understand what's going on in your environment. Maintenance scheduling and downtime. These could also be opportunities for attackers to kill the doctor or try and take over things. Incident response and recovery. It's important to have those tabletop exercises and know how you can repair those things, what might be vulnerable in there. And these days, you always have to have those what if scenarios, and be prepared if there are zombies. Your programmers, your cheerleaders, even your Captain America might have to have replacements with Captain Marvel there, with the other members of the band, so that if they do go into a zombie mode, you can recover. Mentioned before about compliance checklist is not equal to security. You can't learn everything from a book. So no matter what Dolores Umbridge says, you still need to know how to effectively take care of the problems. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is that it really does take a group of people with various different skill sets to understand how to work together. Corporate culture is extremely important because those people might have unique ideas. So Luna Lovegood, she told Harry, hey, we'll get to the Ministry of Magic using a Thestral. So she was aware of other tools that could solve the problem. And being aware of those tools and thinking about it this way, this might also give your auditors a little chuckle if you bring up some stories. And then another thing about your auditors having that call tree and knowing who you're going to talk to on here. And then APIs are a really big issue these days, and wanted to go ahead and pause and ask the moderator, do we have any questions that have been popping up? Because I know we've got just a few more minutes right now.
Yeah, so right, we've got a lot of Lego discussions, so that's kicked off, and a lot of people that are very envious at your minifig collection, and including some that people weren't aware even that there were minifigs of.
Okay.
Okay, so there's that. And then I just got one question from Bex, who said, have you ever used them to make a stop motion video in any way?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I have done some very basic ones. Going back to when Steven Spielberg worked together with the Lego group to create the Movie Maker set. And I had a lot of those when they first came out. But then I took the plunge and actually bought them all on eBay. Somebody had the entire ones. So as part of that Movie Maker, they had some dinosaurs in there. They even had a minifig of Steven Spielberg. I think that one was a Comic-Con exclusive though. If you go to Brick Films, if you go to YouTube, there's a ton of Lego photos and minifigs on Instagram. I'm not really on there anymore because it is way too easy to spend hours and hours and hours just scrolling through the photos. And there's even a Lego Village where they're doing some builds over there. So if you haven't dropped into that, definitely go over here. Now, one thing I wanted to point out before we end, just wanted to bring up two things about APIs. So in this case, I've got some bots, I've got some malicious actors, but over here, this is throttling and rate control. It could be some of your partners or customers that are sending too many requests, hence the red. And then other partners and customers are getting closer to hitting those limits, so it's in the yellow. So I wanted to bring those out just in play. The other thing about your APIs, you really don't ever know how many builds are out there that are still vulnerable and available. If you wanted to get more information, I have presented at two LASCON conferences, Lone Star Application Security conferences in 2021 and 2022 that have more of the presentations and more of my talks there. Some of these similar slides are in there. So I've talk a little bit more about APIs, in this case, Scarecrow coming in, misconfiguration. This one always got a lot of laughs when I went to Java user groups. So Jar Jar Binks and the Gungans with jars. A lot of talk about software bill of materials and vulnerability. You're logging and monitoring, but is somebody actually disabling those controls? Are they letting the actors know, sanitizing data? You know, regardless where you are in a career, you don't have to be a DJ. But in Texas, you do have to have a fiddle in the band. This is also an example of some of the old school Easter eggs. So in this case, you've got Blacktron, the little kid fiddler is sporting one of the Lego space themes, Blacktron. And there's a lot of Easter eggs for space themes over in the Lego Ninjago sets as well. Not laughing, not magic. I'm in Texas, so sometimes it is rocket science. Need to do a shout out to special sets like the Lego Ideas, Women in NASA. Important to make sure that our daughters, our wives, those other people in our lives, our partners, are aware that women can contribute a massive amount. Without some of these folks, we would not have space exploration at all. And there's always cool sets that come out. Wakanda Forever here, in Shuri's lab. Great scientific advancement and making a big contribution. Just one of the sets, like here, Garmadon's Lair, bringing this up. Always keep your eye out for the sets when they come out. Otherwise, they can be really super expensive. Your little poly bags, the mini sets, and your minifig collections, those are always good examples of getting a good value for your money. VIP, there's sometimes VIP specials. So in case here, there was a spooky VIP add-on pack. And don't ask me why they have the regular teddy bears in here for a spooky pack. I have no idea. And then your extra sets as well there. So that's all I wanted to do for my slides. And so let's see, we only have 1, maybe 2 minutes left, or did we already hit that mark?
Yeah, no, I think we've got a couple more minutes before we have to go. But yeah, thank you very much. Just a personal note from me, as well as a few people on the channel was just saying how nice it is to see something totally different, security explained using Lego. Like my first job, I had to do some awareness stuff, and it was more of a checkbox exercise. And the guy before me put a slide deck together, but it was all bullet points and default clip art and stuff like that. And I was putting people to sleep, so I had to redo the whole slide. So yeah, it's nice to see people thinking out of the box and coming up with new ideas or new ways of explaining something that is important but might be a bit strange. Yeah, and I did appreciate your term that you used there for well-worn used member of the community, because that's definitely what I am. It's like, but yeah, it's good, and it's nice to see it done in a slightly different way, and I think that is definitely something we can take away from your talk, which is done very well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, my mom's in her mid-70s, so
No.
if I can explain things to my mom, and if I can explain things to my friends' kids with Lego sets, there's hardly anyone that has a problem with Lego sets when they're not stepping on them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess when I'm at work, sometimes the concepts that I have to, I can't talk to you. I need a whiteboard when I'm sure you're the same, but like, hang on, let me get my Lego set.
Oh yeah, with the whiteboards, I went to Home Depot or Lowe's, I can't remember, and I got just the gigantic 6 by 12 foot marker board that they have. So I've got 4 of those hanging up here in my house. Yeah, and I've got all these different Lego ideas over here for different presentations and ideas, just if I ever did a defense against the dark arts as examples of security vendors, that's one thing I do have in mind. So, but yeah, feel free to reach out and talk to me. I'll be in the channels throughout the rest of the day. And Leslie, thank you for organizing this and allowing me to be one of the speakers. It is definitely an honor and a privilege to be a part of such a great conference.